Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here and good to, I was going to say good to see you all, but I can't see any of you. And look, it was supposed to be an Adventist motorcycle ministry a Sabbath, and last year we brought our bikes along, and just switch to the PowerPoint. Well, I got a couple of pictures there. Last year we had our motorbikes along here. Unfortunately, we can't do it this year because of the virus, but I was almost going to ride today, but 6 degrees outside and pouring rain, so that was off. Here we go. Yep. This is our bikes out the front last year, and a nice group of bikes, aren't they? I particularly like the one that's got a bit of red on it. That's really nice. Yes. And last year, Danny did the children's story, and of course, Nick told his testimony, which was touched. We were all touched by that. And of course, our favourite church member is Marissa, and if she's watching, hello, Marissa. And this year we've been fairly hamstrung, not being able to work as a motorbike ministry, but we did have a run on before the lockdown up to Alexandria. We had a Bible study, which was great. The only other thing we've done this year as a group, if you like, is we've supported financially Steve Barrington. Steve Barrington's with the God Squad from Melbourne, and he's been up in the Hills district. He's been delivering meals to those who are homeless and those who are in the greatest need. It says 10,000 meals there. That's up until March. He's done another 10,000 meals since then. And he has no budget, and we've helped him financially a couple of times just to help with the food, etc. After the virus is over, we can travel again. We will certainly bike ride up to him and give him a hand with what he's doing. Look, I'm going to share today about my daughter Lani and her daughter Indy. When I worked for the church, I travelled all over the place, and wherever I went, and even as in the motorbike ministry, travelling all over Victoria, I'm asked the same question. Overseas, I was in Russia and Ukraine, even when I was at the division office in the Philippines, I was asked, all over the place I've been asked the same question. How's Lani going after the accident? How's Indy going after the accident? And this is the first time I'm going to share this. It's very emotional for me. And I just want to put a couple of little disclaimers in there. First, there's some pictures in here from the hospital that some might find a bit squeamish. I'll tell you when they're coming up. The second thing is, look, I understand I'm not the only one we're not the only family that have gone through something like this, but this is just how I saw God working through people he chose to save my daughter. It's all from my perspective. And I just want to share a text. It's Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. We need to trust in the Lord with all of our heart. That's easy when things go well, but when things happen that we don't expect, or things happen that just tear us apart, that's the time we really need to trust. Like this is just a simple map. You see where I live up in Wandon. The church I go to, the Yarra Valley Church, is about a kilometre up the road, and Lani and Indy were living about 5.5 k's away. I want to say just here that Lani and Indy had 5 major car accidents in 2 years. I mean, 5 car accidents where their car was written off. Not one of them was her fault. The 4th accident happened she left our place just 2 k's from our home. Her and Indy had left, and about 2 or 3 minutes later she rang and said, "Dad, quick, come, I've been in an accident." We raced around, and a man had gone through a stop sign in a 4-wheel drive, and Lani ploughed into the side of him. She wasn't hurt from memory, but Indy had a few minor cuts and scratches and abrasions, seatbelt bruises and whatever else. And right from that day, Lani said, "My daughter will never ride in the front of the car again until she's an adult." And Indy travelled in the back seat. That was February 2013. December 2013, the same year, Lani had come around to pick Indy up again. Indy had come to church with us on the Sabbath, and about 3 o'clock, Indy came. She was 10 years of age. She came and said to me, can I please give my mum a ring? I want to spend some quality time with her, is what she said. And I said, sure. So Lani came around and picked the daughter up and headed off. After she left, we realised she'd left something she was supposed to take home, a little thing she was supposed to take with her. And Michael and I, my wife Michael and I, we were going to jump in our motorbike. It was a hot day and go up into the hills and have a ride around. And we thought we'd go past Lani's place and drop this thing off. So we headed off just a few minutes after, maybe 10 minutes. I don't know how long it takes to put your gear on and lock the house and go. We were going straight away. And we got to that corner just near that reserve. We turned right, and a car pulled us up and said, "You can't get through. There's been a bad smash. You have to go around the long way." And all of a sudden it hit me, it can't be Lani, it can't be Lani. So we raced up to the site, and I didn't recognise the car, but I recognised the colour. Lani was still in the car, of course. She was conscious and thrashing about. She had blood coming from everywhere, from her ears, her nose, her mouth, everywhere. It was just, and she was a mess. And I want to say right from here that I believe God hand-picked special people that day. These are some of the people that were involved. On the right is Wayne, and I know all these people are watching today. Wayne's a policeman, and he was with us the whole case. I mean, for a number of months. And Wayne became part of the family, and he went above and beyond the call of duty, and he's welcome at any of our homes at any time. The lady in the middle is Darrell, and she's the one I want to pinpoint at this moment. Darrell's an ambulance officer, paramedic, and her partner is the man on the far left. The man and the other man, I believe, is a CFA, who are incredible. And Darrell told me that she was, they just finished their shift. They were driving the ambulance back into the station to knock off when the job came through, a code 1 or whatever they called it, a serious accident. And Darrell's partner said, look, let's give it to the new crew and knock off and let them go. And Darrell said, Darrell, who's a Christian? She said, no, I believe we have to do this one. And she shot off in the ambulance. When she got there, she'd seen what I understand to be one of the worst accidents that she'd experienced in her 10 years as a paramedic. She showed me a picture of her ambulance after she'd put Lani into the helicopter. And the back of her ambulance, she said it's the first time she's ever used every consumable item in the ambulance. It was just a mess on the floor. Everything was used. And she told me when she took Lani up to the helicopter, which is just 100 metres or so up the road. In fact, that's the site the helicopter came to. This photo was taken a couple of years later. One of the TV stations was doing a stop drink driving advertisement around Christmas, and they got all these people together for the ad or the campaign. She told me when she got to put Lani in the helicopter, she prayed because she'd just lost her parents, and she prayed, Lord, please don't let this little girl, talking about Indy, don't let this little girl lose her mum. Help her to have a mum at Christmas. And she put Lani in the helicopter. And Darrell has become, well, a part of the extended family. That's about goes without saying. She's a wonderful person. We believe God used her. Probably the second miracle of that day was probably Indy. Indy was in the back seat on the passenger side, and she was trapped in the car. If she hadn't been in the front, she undoubtedly would have been killed. She saw the whole thing. She saw her mum and thought her mum was dead. And she prayed. She said, please, Jesus, save my mum. The man in the black shirt, David, he was a neighbour. Listen to this, he was running towards the accident before it even happened. This was in a 50 zone. The police said the impact was 160. The man that was driving was 2.5 times over the limit, unlicensed. And he heard the car coming up the road, and he screaming to his wife as he's running to the accident before it happened. He's screaming, they're not going to make the corner. And he pulled Indy out of the car and carried her back to his home. David told me, he's got a Harley Davidson shirt on there. He's a bike rider, or was a bike rider. He said, I've never ridden my bike since, and I'll never ride it again since the accident. I never asked him why. We got off our bike, and Lani was in the car. Look at the front wheel. You can see part of the mag wheel. The rest of the wheel was never found. We don't know where it went. Lani was in the car. Even though all her limbs were broken, she was thrashing them around. She was conscious, but was sort of not there somehow. And we pulled up, and there was people working on it, people with the jaws of life, cutting the roof off, stuff like that. And then one lady was trying to do something with Lani, and her hair was getting in her face, and she screamed out, "Someone help me with my hair." Well, standing just at the car was a cop, and he was a friend of Nick's who rides with us, and he knew our family, I guess. And when we come up there, we were just totally shocked. My mouth went instantly dry. I never experienced anything like it. And he put his hands out and did the policeman thing, you know, please stand back, don't let anyone through. But I screamed, that is my daughter. And he just went aside and let us through. Michael went straight to the car and she grabbed the lady's hair, and Michael was there the whole time of that accident, helping at that very door. I went to find Indy. I didn't know where she was. She could be dead, I thought. I found her in David's place. Not long after, Nick arrived, and you can see the people on the footpath behind. It's the driver and the people that were in the van. None of them were hurt. They were all drunk, but none of them were hurt. And they were crying. And Nick went over to them and said, "Stop crying. It's not about you guys. It's about Lani." And only as Nick can do, he made them form a circle and all bow their heads as he prayed for Lani. The van that hit her was, it went up in the air 30 metres past, it went in the air 30 metres the other side. And I thank Channel 7 for some of these photos. I didn't take any photos, and other people have given me all the photos. There's Nick getting stuff out of the car. Michael went with Indy to Maroondah Hospital, where she stayed until over midnight getting treatments and stuff. And my idea was I was going to walk up the road and just jump in the helicopter. That was the plan. But when I got to the helicopter, the paramedic said, "You can't come in the helicopter, there's not enough room." And he just took off. I thought, man, what am I going to do? We've only been living in Melbourne a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and I haven't even heard of the Alfred Hospital. So I had to race my bike home to get the car with the GPS. And I don't know whether I beat the helicopter into the hospital, but I certainly made it in quick time, that's for sure. I think it takes 45 minutes from my house to get there, and I'm not trying to exaggerate. I'm not trying to say anything wrong. Even though, look, I did nothing dangerous, but I broke every rule under the sun. I think I got there in 15 minutes to the hospital. And, I broke, like I say, broke every rule, but nothing dangerous. I went through red lights, wrong side of the road, speeding, the whole thing. And amazing, like, isn't it amazing you do all that stuff and not get booked? They even pulled me up along the way to breathalyse me. Can you believe it? Some breathalyzing unit was up near Chirnside Park, and they pulled me over, and some young cop shoved a breathalyzer into the window. And I just screamed out, "I can't stay, I've got to go." And he was terrified. He looked at me and was terrified, and looked across at his sergeant, and his sergeant said, let him go, and I screeched off. If you think that's not a miracle, next time you get breathalyzed, see if you can just take off like that. God was working a miracle. Along the way, I rang 3 people to pray. And these 3 people who'd known Lani all of her life, Kevin Geelan, Pat Downey, my friend in New Zealand, and Joe Paola. Some of you might know these people. And I asked them to pray. I said, "Lani and Indy have had an accident. Lani might not make it." And yes, in the ambulance, in the helicopter, Lani actually died. What happened was her whole brain was smashed. It hit the corner pillow and it was smashed. Her lungs hit the steering wheel, and the air didn't come up through her mouth. Both the sides split open, the air came out the sides. She had no lung capacity. In the helicopter, the paramedic knew there was 2 dangers, her brain and her lungs, and she stopped breathing. She couldn't breathe. He told me, I saw him about 2 or 3 weeks later in the hospital. I recognised him, and he told me that he had to get 4 25mm clear plastic pipes and put 2 in each side and the holes in the side and shove them into her lungs and try and resuscitate her heart, which he did. I asked him what time that happened, and he was able to tell me the time. It was the exact same time that my friends were praying for Lani. When I arrived at the hospital, I didn't know there's never any place to park. I just parked in the first gap I could see. It wasn't even a parking spot. And somehow the car stayed there all night and never got booked. I raced into the hospital, and there's waiting room, went through a waiting room with people sitting in it, and I come to a lady at the reception desk and told her my daughter's brought in, is she still alive? She said, "Look, come with me." She took me to a little room. I didn't wait in the waiting room, I went to a little room and waited, and I got in that waiting room and I fell on my knees and I prayed to God to spare my daughter. And I sat in that waiting, just waiting for someone to come, and I could picture maybe the doctor coming in and saying, "Are you John Brereton?" and saying, "Look, we're sorry to say your daughter's passed away." I expected that. And as I'm sitting there waiting, praying, the door opens and in walks a doctor. I knew he was a doctor. He had a long white coat and a stethoscope. And there was 2 ladies with him. I don't know who they were. And I spun around and looked at him over my left shoulder at the door, and our eyes met. And for that split second, time froze. Looking at his face, it was probably only a second. And I'm watching his face to see if there's any indication in his face about my daughter. And he looked at me and he says, "Are you?" And he said some name, Fred Smith or something. "Are you Fred Smith?" I said, "No." He said, "Sorry, wrong room," and left. I got on my knees and I prayed again, "Please, Lord, spare my daughter." Lani was, about that time, Kevin Gielan and Beck turned up, Beck, my daughter. And I just want to say that Beck was absolutely amazing over the next 6 months. She's always been amazing, but ultra amazing. What she accomplished and what she did and how she did it was just mind-blowing, actually. And so Beck turned up with Kevin Gielan, and not with them, they both come at different cars, and they come to support. And we were called in. The receptionist came and got me. "Come and see Lani, she's still alive." We went to see her. I've never seen anything like it. I was nervous, I was a mess. Lani was laying on a steel table. She had no clothes on, just like a lilo on top of it, yellow lilo with round, long tubes in it. And I went up and I felt her side, and she was stone cold. And they told me that they operate on her brain and operate on her lungs that night. And that we should go home. There's nothing we could do. So I asked Beck and Kevin Gielan to go home, but I stayed. I went up into the ICU waiting room, and I stayed there all night waiting for Lani to come out of the operation. There was a nurse, ICU nurse, who came out and saw me there a number of times and told me what I was waiting for, and I told her, and she kept giving me reports. "She's not back yet. She's still in the operating theatre." And in the wee hours of the morning, I don't know what time it was, she came and got me. I went in, and apparently there's, I knew nothing about this type of stuff, but walking through the ICU to Lani's room, right down the very end, it was the biggest room in the whole ICU. There's 36 beds in the Alfred ICU, and Lani had the biggest room because there's all this equipment in there, right down the very end of the helicopter pad. And there's not just a doctor working on her. There was 50 doctors working on her. There was teams. There was a brain team. There was a lung team. There was teams that did breaks. There was she had a number of skin grafting teams. There was all types of teams. And then there was a trauma team that oversees all the teams. And the head of the trauma team was in there that night, on that morning actually. And he told me that he didn't expect Lani to live. And he said the major problem is this thing here, number 12. This is the brain pressure. They'd operate on a brain, and they'd open a skull up and they put in a sensor to do the pressure somehow. And they said, "This is not Lani's machine." This is when I got off the Facebook or internet or something. Lani's pressure was 24. And they said if it gets to 30, she'll die. He explained to me that the brain was like a marshmallow in a hard casing. And when it gets knocked, the brain will get bruised. He said, and once it's bruised, there's a healing process. And there's swelling. He said, with Lani's brain, the whole entire brain was bruised, and it was going to swell and swell. And the next 2 or 3 days, there's nothing I could do about it. It swelled to 30. The pressure got to 30. She'd die. On the way home, I rang Beck, my daughter, and told her. And she said, "Dad, do you mind if I put it on Facebook that we have a prayer vigil for Lani? Just put it on Facebook. Anyone who wants to come, rock up to Lilydale Lake tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. I said, "Go for it, do it. You know, because we trust in a living God. We trust in a living God. Our God's a living God. He's not a God that's distant. He's a God that's close. He's a God that's living. Because we trust in a living God, we have a living hope. And no matter how bad the situation, God is right there with us side by side. God has promised to bless us, and he always does. Underline the word always. So Beck organised this prayer vigil at Lilydale Lakes the next morning, Sunday morning, and it was just on Facebook, public Facebook, and no one counted how many people, but about 100 people turned up, I guess. And in the group, you can see on the right in the blue T-shirts, Dave Erickson. He was one of the Lilydale pastors at the time. He's a real down-to-earth guy, and he was the perfect guy to be there. You can see me standing there in the middle with my blue jeans and jacket, and Dave Erickson asked me to say a few words about Lani, and I couldn't speak. And Nick, who's kneeling at Dave Erickson's side, he stood up and stepped in. And I want to say thank you, Nick, for the tremendous blessing you were for our family all through that time. Nick went beyond the call of duty too to help. Nick got up and told about the brain pressure, how that it was 24, if I got to 30, she'd die. And so Dave Erickson said to everybody, look, he says, I know most of you aren't Christians. We thank you for coming. He says, we're going to pray for one thing, that Lani's brain pressure doesn't go up. He says, look, if you don't know how to pray, just everyone get into twos and talk. God will understand. And everybody got into twos and prayed for Lani. That brain pressure never went up. In fact, in 2 days, it was 18. And it never, ever went up. In 3 days, she had 7% of her lung capacity back. Both the lung doctors and the brain doctors they just couldn't believe it. I told them it was a miracle. And it was. There's no other word for it. They've never seen it before. I like this quote from one of my favourite Christian authors. It says, "It is part of God's plan to grant us, in the answer to the prayer of faith, that which he would not bestow did we not ask." This tells me, well, there's a war on this planet. There's a war for every living soul. There's a war between Satan and between Jesus, and they're warring over us. And there's rules. This tells me when we pray, it allows God to step in and do things he couldn't normally do. It is part of God's plan to grant us, in the answer to the prayer of faith, that which he would not bestow did we not ask. How little we pray. How little. Look, this dot tells me there's a few pictures coming up that if you've got a sensitive stomach or something or whatever, you might want to look at. This was Lani in the ICU. She had, like I said, she had a number of issues. This is Sunday afternoon. We didn't know the extent of her injuries until we first got in there. Her right hip was busted, and they put that thing on there because they prioritised. They couldn't operate on her bones until her lungs and brain were sort of healed a bit. And so they put this thing on there to hold her in place. Probably the main injury she had was on her right foot. It doesn't look so bad, but it was. They wanted to amputate it at one time, and they tried a new technique. And they said 10 years ago they would have had no other option but to amputate. And I'll tell you about that technique in a minute. It was incredible what they did. Lani was in a coma, induced coma for a couple of weeks. Only God can turn a mess into a message, a test into a testimony, a trial into a triumph, and a victim into a victory. Only God can turn things around. I believe that with all my heart, and I saw it with Lani. Bruce Manners, who's a family friend and pastor, he come down to anoint Lani. It says in the Bible, if you're sick, to anoint the person and pray over them. Now, there's nothing magical about being anointed, but it just shows that you have faith, that you believe in God. And we did that. Bruce Manners anointed Lani. We prayed over her. And all my family came. You can see in the back there's Beck at the far back, and then daughter Rachel. Rachel was talk about God working. Rachel was in some Malaysia or Thailand or somewhere. I can't remember where she was. And she was supposed to fly back to Sydney, where she lives in Gosford. She was supposed to fly back to Sydney. On the way back, the pilot said, "Look, we can't land in Sydney for some reason. We have to land in Melbourne, but don't worry, we're going to pay for your hotel for the night." So she was able to come to Melbourne on this missed flight and be there at that day. Our son John come from the Gold Coast, and everyone's doing the heart there because that was Lani's sign to do this heart. She'd do that to everybody, and she'd say, "I love you, love you." That was her sign. And about this time, this was on Monday, Beck said, "Dad, do you want to meet? I've been talking to the driver. Do you want to meet him?" I said, "Sure." We'd already forgiven him, but we met him on Tuesday, 2.5 days after the accident. And Beck said, "I'll arrange to meet him." Michael and I drove in to Lilydale Church where we arranged to meet this John. His name was John. He's 21 years of age, or maybe 22. And he was the driver. He hit Lani. And so we arranged to meet with him and his family at Lilydale Church. And when we drove in, I got out of the car, and John, the driver, drove in with his parents and a number of family members, and I recognised him from the accident. I guess he must have recognised me because he raced over and he just threw himself on me and buried his head into my shoulder, and he just cried and cried, and I hugged him and he hugged me, and he said, "I'm so sorry, so sorry." I said, "I know, so am I." He said, "I wish it was me." I said, "I understand, I wish it was me too." We just cried and cried. We went inside and sat down. This is the picture that Derek Rippingale, who was with us, took that day. You can see myself and Beck there. There's Nick, my wife behind Nick, Michael, and then Dave Erickson. And then behind me is Con and Veronica. They're the driver's parents, if you like. John, the driver's in the blue denim shirt at the back. And the lady kneeling, her name's Katie, and her mum, I know they're watching today. And I just want to say that Katie and her mum are Christians, and they prayed for Lani. And I just thank you so much for your prayers, because God answered them. In fact, next Sabbath, John and Katie and her mum and Veronica all come to church. They come to church with us for about a year, I think. No one knew that they were associated with the accident. They were just our friends, and they came to church. There's a couple more pictures of Lani with in the hospital if you don't want to see. Lani's right leg was a major issue, and that foot. This is really interesting in a way because that bottle of blood there, her upper right thigh, they cut from just above the knee to the top of her groin. They cut it open, and this was the technique they used to save her foot. They actually told me they dug in right into a muscle and took a handful of muscle the size of your fist, cut a handful of muscle out, and that's what that ball is there, that container catching all the stuff from that wound. And they got that handful of muscle, and they put it through, the doctor said they put it, this way he explained it, they put it through a mincemeat grinder and grind into mincemeat. Then they formed a sausage and stuck it on a leg with gauze and had a 20% chance of growing into a muscle. And that's it there, 20% chance. And it did grow, it grew into a muscle. God blessed, and it grew into a muscle. And over the next few, or maybe the next year or so, she had to have it debulked. It shrunk, and they debulked it and shaped it, and it worked into a muscle so she could actually walk, although they said she'd never be able to bend a foot. That's her foot there today. You can see all those little shiny things behind her heel, above her heel there. That's all pins in the muscle to hold it together. Lani was supposed to be in hospital for 6 months and rehab for 12 months. She was in hospital for 1 month and rehab for 4 months. And this is 2 weeks after the accident, maybe 3 weeks. She was sent to the burns unit because she had lots of skin grafts, and they looked after the skin grafts in the burn unit. They still hadn't operated on her right leg at this stage. And Lani had what they call PTA, post-traumatic amnesia, which meant every morning she woke up and she had a blank slate. In ICU, there's a nurse for every patient, and they work 12-hour shifts. So there's a person with Lani 24/7. When she comes to the general ward, even the burns unit, there's one nurse with a number of patients, so she had no one in that room all the time. And she'd wake up every morning with amnesia, post-traumatic amnesia, which meant she was a blank slate, didn't know where she was, her name, anything. So our family made a plan. We were going to be with her from 7 in the morning when the visiting hours open at 7 till 10 at night. I'm an early person. I did the first shift. I got there every morning before 7. I stayed till about 11 o'clock at lunchtime or something. My wife came in and did the shift till 2:30 because she had to pick Indy up from school because Indy was at our place now. Then Beck come in and did a shift until maybe 6 or 7. And then Nick come in, who's a night owl. He did the 7 till 10. And we were with her 24/7. One time I went to the loo and Lani was trying to escape, walking on that foot out the door. I couldn't believe it. Normally what would happen, I'd be in there when she woke up. And she'd wake up and I'd say, "Hi, Lani, my name's Dad. I'm your dad, and you're in hospital. You've had an accident. It wasn't your fault, and Indy's okay." And I'd say that every morning. Every morning she'd look at me with the most innocent face and just believe what I said. She just trusted me. 1 or 2 mornings she didn't know who I was, but she just was so innocent. Beck started the Facebook page off because so many people were ringing. We're getting phone calls all the time. And so Beck said, let's start a Facebook page up. We can put prayer requests on there, daily prayer requests, and also talk about her latest, what's been happening for the day. So she did that. You see there it's got 7,419 people following or something. I don't understand it really. But it was only after about a week or two, there was 100,000, more than 100,000 people following from all around the world. And we're inundated. I was up at 3 every morning before I went at 7, just answering and responding. We answered every note that was put on there. And in the end, Beck said, "We need more administrators, Dad. You and I can't do it." So we got Beck and Lani's siblings were administrators. There was cousins, and all over Australia there was a number of people who were replying to every note. We got so many notes. It was so many. I wish I had time to tell you about some of these that I remember, but I want to share just one. This comes from a guy called Timothy. We don't know who he is or even what country he lives in. He said, "Lani, you are such an inspiration with your beautiful nature and have endured so much pain, and I pray for you, even though I'm not religious. I love the fact that you have no ill feelings towards the driver and forgiveness. I was feeling very depressed and dare say I was ready to do something stupid until I found your page, which has helped me greatly. Love reading your post daily. It always brightens my day. That's indicative of the notes we received on a regular basis. Lani, have you ever tried when someone, you can't, I had no power to even pay Lani's phone bill to stop a rent on a house. I had to go to the court and get a court order so that I could forget what the word is, just be in charge of all of her finances and stuff. And eventually I got the order and we could move her out of her home. And these are some people from the community and also Lilydale youth from the church. They volunteered and come around with trucks and trailers and moved all of her stuff out, and someone had a shed we put them into. And I thank Derek and Jenny Rippingale and Nick and Beck for organising all this stuff. It was just amazing. But see the heart? This heart was what everyone was starting to do. And I started to go on Facebook. This is a CFA from Wandon. And we put this on the Facebook, and then it went all over the world. This is some theology students at Avondale, Lilydale Church, and then it just went ballistic. People from all over the world were doing these hearts. God will do great things for his people when they put their entire trust in him. We need to put our entire trust in God. It's easy to do when things are going right, but when things go wrong, we need to still trust God, each one of us. In fact, I believe that's why God allows little troubles to come day by day so we can learn to practice our faith and trust in him. So when the big trouble comes, we learn to trust him. We've learned. This group of people here were at the prayer vigil at Lilydale Lake, and I didn't know one of them, but I do know a lot of them now, and they were Lani's workmates. The lady in the green shirt, Dale, I know she's watching today, and Dale's a Christian, and she's a gem of a person, and I believe her and her husband, Chris, they've been praying for Lani, and they were the biggest blessing. I cannot say enough for Dale. Behind Dale is Lauren, and Lauren's also a good friend of Lani's and been a real blessing over the time. Lani was working for Myer at Fountain Gate Plaza, and Fountain Gate Plaza was a new shopping centre, only opened 18 months. Lani applied for her dream job, even though she didn't have any qualifications. It was called visual merchandiser, and her job was to, if she got the job, was to the visual merchandiser's job is to dress the windows and all the mannequins. There's about 200 mannequins throughout Myers, dress them in displays and that type of thing. So it's a very important job because it's the storefront window, if you like, for the shop. And the manager, the shop wasn't open, of course, but Alison is what became the manager, and she interviewed a number of people. And I got this figure in my head: 300 people applied for the job, and Lani was the only one that didn't have any qualifications. And Alison, who's very smart, and I love Alison. She's wonderful. She chose Lani, and why did you choose Lani? Because she's got tattoos. I said, why? Why? Because tattoos? Because I know that she'll think outside the square. I know that she's artistic. And Lani got the job. And Lani said, "See, Dad, I told you tattoos are good." And Alison invited me to come and have a morning talk with her staff at the shop. The shop had been open 18 months after Lani's accident, up until Lani's accident. And then I come in one morning and had a talk with the staff and pray with them. And Alison, I know she's listening, I don't want to embarrass her in any way, but what boss pays someone for 3 months after they've had an accident? Lani got full pay for 3 months. I remember the day after 3 months was up, Alison rang me and said, "John, I'm so sorry, but I've got to stop paying her now." I said, "Alison, thank you for what you've done. Just thank you so much." I met the state manager for Myer. There's lots of stories here. This is the CEO for Myer for all of Australia. Bernie's his first name. And this is before the accident. Lani got an award. He demanded an update on Lani's health report every morning on his desk in Sydney. This photo doesn't mean much to many people. I know Beck, Lani, Indy, Michael, and others in the family, Nick, will understand the importance of this photo. Lani's fingers were so mangled. I remember the first time she did that. We had a party. She could touch her little finger on her thumb. She put her hands together like the heart. We put this on Facebook, and it just went absolutely viral, went all over the world. And people started to send hearts in. Hearts come from everywhere. There's egg hearts. And I remember this couple from Caribbean on their honeymoon saw this rock in the ocean and believed it was some sort of thing. There was just hearts come from all over the place. some lady made a cake. I think she might have even brought it around to our house or something. Another guy in Adelaide made hearts out of bronze and sent us a packet of these hearts. And people started to get on board. Maya in Brisbane, Maya in Adelaide had fundraisers and different things and sent money down. There was a pub in Brisbane, in the CBD of Brisbane. They saw it on Facebook. They asked all their patrons as they come into their pub to put a gold coin in a box for Lani. And they sent down hundreds of dollars. I never had an opportunity to meet these people. I thank God that Beck went up to Brisbane and met them and when she was up there and spoke to them. And all these hearts started to come in. There was just like it. And I want to thank a bit of a shout out to the people at the Record, Kent Kingston and the team. They were just so supportive through all this time. And look, there was just so many hearts. There were just hundreds of them coming, creative ones, and from all over the world they came. Other hospitals started to send pictures of hearts in, and Pacific Islands, all over the place. This is one of my favourites. It says, "I will not forget you. See, I have written your name on the palms of my hands." How good is that? One of my other favourites is I was on a flight from Brisbane to Melbourne, and the flight was fairly empty, and the air hostess handed me a cookie, a biscuit. It was the shape of a heart. And I just had a look. I thought, wow. And she said, "What do you mean?" And so she took me up the back and asked me the story, and I told her the story. And she said, "Look, get your phone out. We'll do a heart for Lani." And then the one on the right, I can't remember her name, she said, "Oh, I can do better than that. I'm going to see Alan, get him to do one." So she went down. As we were flying over the harbour bridge, these two pilots did the heart for Lani. And that went on there. And some of you might know Julie Craig from Lilydale Church. Julie got me a pit pass into the back of the Formula One races and the V8 races, and I went in. I met Betty Clemenco. I don't know if anyone knows Betty. Betty's a multi-millionaire. She owns the Mercedes racing team. And she told me a story how she was brought up on the streets. This older couple who never had any kids adopted her, made her part of the family. When they died, they left her a fortune, and she bought the Mercedes team. And she says, "I never had my photo taken, but I'll do it for Lani." And I met some of these other racers. I met Dick Johnson, who won Bathurst when I was a kid a number of times, and his son Steve. It was just so many people were doing the heart for Jesus. John Bauer, I made a complete fool of myself. I said, "What do you do here? You work in the pit crew or something?" He said, the person I was with punched me in the shoulder and said, "You don't know John Bauer? He won Bathurst twice." And John Bauer laughed it off and he said, "I've got a room full of trophies at home." He said, "You can come around my place and take anything you want," to auction it off for Lani. Will Davidson, even the Roulettes had a connection with Lani somehow and set the hearts in. And they come from all over the world, Dane Swan. And it was about this time that Alison and Dale, who Lani's two bosses, if you like, they asked me about running a gala night for Lani to raise money to buy her a car that was a safe car. They wanted to buy the safest car in the world. So they had a gala night. Lani was still in rehab and couldn't attend. But somehow Alison spoke to the hospital and people, and they brought Lani in an ambulance. They sort of sneaked her out and brought her. And this is what Alison, and you can tell why they're such great people. Alison and Dale arranged this gala night where they, and I haven't got many pictures, I'm sorry, I wish I did have. They rented a hotel out and they put all these chairs and stuff there. They bought a band from Sydney. They bought a TV competitor to run the night, and they had had what they call a silent auction. Collingwood football team signed a football. Every member signed a football to be auctioned off. Jonathan Thurston signed a football jumper to be auctioned off. I remember there, amongst all this stuff, there was artwork, paintings and stuff all around in exquisite displays, not just on a table, but in glass cabinets all around. There was the sword there from Braveheart movie was there. And I don't know where they got this stuff from. People donated this stuff and had this auction. It wasn't an auction where you bid, it was a silent auction. They got a pad and paper and pen beside each item, and you walk around, you put your bid on it, and their bidding closes at 9 o'clock and the highest bid gets the item. I thought I wanted to contribute and help too, so I put a bid in on this. I waited till about 1 minute to 9. I walked up and I put $400 bid on Jonathan Thurston's football jumper. And I thought I'd get it. And when the compare started to say who got what things, I remember Chris Dart, Dale's husband, he bid his highest for the Collingwood football. And I thought I had the highest bid for this jumper. And when the name called out, it wasn't me, it was a lady. It was the Myer store manager from Adelaide who'd come across for this gala night. She went and bought it. And instead of walking back to her seat, she came to my table and she gave it to me as a gift. Who does that? Who does that type of stuff? You know, Alison brought Lani to the hotel. No one knew about it, just a few of us. And she hired a makeup artist for Lani and her best friend. They were there, and to make her up look nice. And they come in the ambulance, and they said, "This is just maybe 3 months, maybe 4 months after the accident. She'd never walk again. She'd never be able to talk again. She'd die. And she was there." And Alison said, "Pick anything out of the shop to wear. You can take anything off the floor, you can wear it." And Lani got dressed up. And when they brought her in at the end of the night, and they come in, and everyone just went berserk, clapping and everything else. And that's a night I'll never forget. Your feeling of dependency will drive you to prayer. And your sense of duty summons you to effort. Only believe in God. Take him at his word. Act by faith. And blessings will come. We need to believe in God. By believing in God, we need to put our faith into action, our belief into action. When we put our belief into action, that's when we're really trusting him. He says, and blessings will come. That's a promise. God's promised to send blessings. You know, Lani was, like I say, 4 months in rehab, supposed to be there a year. And I remember the first time they put her into the wheelchair, it took 4 hours, a team of people, 4 hours to get her into the wheelchair. Standing up, you think standing up's not a big deal, but when you've been laying down for so long and your muscles are wasted away and you have all the breaks and stuff, this was the first day she stood up. And you can see her face. Lani never complained. She's never complained. You ask her how she's going, she'll say fantastic. She never whinges about her pains and agonies and that. And she became shiny Lani. She was just bright and beaming all the time. She was incredible, an inspiration. You know, this is a rehab room. You see the red square on her leg? That's where some skin was cut off for some graft somewhere. She had over 76 operations. I remember that. We stopped counting at 76. God never leads his children otherwise than they would choose to be led, if they could see the end from the beginning and discern the glory of the purpose which they are fulfilling as co-workers with him. God never leads us in any way that when we finally find out why this happened, we'll say, that was the best thing to do. Thank you. Thank you. She finally come back to our place after 5 months and stayed at our place. She's had the opportunity to be on TV numerous times with different celebrities and whatever else, sharing a story. And I just wanted to say, Lani, I love you so much. And Indy, I'm so glad that you're still with us, both of you. Call unto me, it says in Jeremiah, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things that you know not. And what a blessing it is to have these two beautiful women in my life. And I want to thank all those who God had chose. Wayne and Darrell, the CFA from Wandon, who pulled her out of 2 accidents. I was speaking to one man this morning, just sitting in church here. And he's saying he's a Christian and he prayed for Lani. He said he'd never seen an accident so bad. Didn't expect her to live. So may God bless each of us. And I hope that's been an inspiration to you. And God bless us. Thank you.